You're going to a drug deal in a ghost town? Like, is this an episode of Scooby-Doo? I've been riding motorcycles for pretty much all of my life. And I've had many of them. I believe I own 9 of them right now. But there's one that's been the most special of all those. And this is the one that I had a lot of adventures on. Now, the bike in question was a 1998 Honda Shadow Aero. Now, I had had a previous Honda Shadow to this one that was my college motorcycle, and I abused this thing to within an inch of its life, and it just kept coming back for more. So when I finally killed it, drag racing it, cracked the head, did not hesitate to go buy another one. And this particular model was beautiful. It had white walls, big balanced fenders, had a single pin crank in it, which gave it a very lopey engine. This was the motorcycle that Harley Davidson sued Honda over the sound of the bike. But I love this thing, and I rode it. I put almost 150,000 miles on this bike. So those first few miles, however, were a bit problematic. I had done one of my earlier cross-country trips on it. There is something about the Pacific Ocean that just scares the hell out of a lot of my vehicles. I've had 3 different vehicles over the years. When I pulled up to the Pacific Ocean, something went wrong. Similar thing to this bike. I had ridden through San Francisco, went up the Pacific Coast Highway a little bit, got to that first big vista, pulled up to the cliff, and the entire electrical system just went foof. But, people in Northern California are very friendly. I was able to push it down the hill, get it started, got it to a Walmart, went inside, got a few, I carry a pretty good toolkit, but got a few other things I needed, and, proceeded to work on it through most of the evening. This bike just has this sort of good karma, bad karma, sour and sweet sort of thing. I had gone out there with a group of fellas on bikes. I didn't really know these guys too well, and I should have known them better because as soon as my bike broke, they pretty much just ditched me. They claimed we were all going to meet back at the campsite that night, but, they wanted to go see the sights, and they were the only thing they could do to help me fix the bike, and I'm a pretty good mechanic, so I had it handled. So they take off. We're all going to meet back at the campsite. And I spend the rest of the evening working on this bike in this parking lot. And I think I was somewhere up around Ukiah or somewhere up Northern California. And again, just delightful people up there. The manager stuck around, left the parking lights on for me. The whole time I was in there working, as shoppers had gone in and out, people would stop. Hey, you need a trailer. Hey, you need a part. You need a driveway to work in. You can camp in my front yard. My brother's got a bike shop. I mean, just people just offering help, offering places to stay. Really delightful folks. I got the bike running enough to get it on the road. Made it to the campsite we were all supposed to meet at. These guys are nowhere to be found. So, this is, 2000, 2001. We got cell phones, but it's still the little digital, old school things. So I start calling numbers. Nobody answers. Like 5 dudes, somebody's got their phone on. And again, I'm a personable guy. We didn't have any sort of beef or anything like that. But they're just gone. And now I'm worried about them. I'm thinking like, man, maybe somebody got in a crash. Maybe something happened. Maybe they're out of range or something. So I'm worried about these guys. So, it gets late into the night. I got a room for a couple hours. Get up first thing in the morning. Still calling. Can't get these guys on the phone. My wife's with me, and she's like, do you think they're avoiding us? And I was like, well, I don't think so. It had originally started out as a trip where everybody brought your girlfriend, brought your wife, but then all the other girls had dropped out, and it was just me with the girl. And then my bike broke, and they were pretty eager. They were going to meet up with some girls they had contacted. So it seemed like a possibility. So they're ignoring my cell phone. So I went to a payphone. That's back when payphone was still around. And I called them from a payphone. One of them answered right away. So I said, hey, what's going on? You guys weren't at the campsite last night. They're like, oh, well, we thought you were going to ride back to Georgia. I'm like, really? That's we're 3,000 miles from home and my bike broke. You think I'm just going to ride back to Georgia? And they're like, well, we've already taken off on our part of the trip. We're going to meet these girls and we got to go. So we'll see you back in Athens. All right. See, this is going to be. The big problem is they had some of my stuff because after my bike broke, my wife at the time was the ER nurse. So we had the first aid kit and I had the biggest bike. So I had the tool kit. I had the first aid kit and stuff like that. So I think they had taken my camp stove. They'd taken all the extra stuff off the bike to kind of lessen the weight up. So I had less to push or work with or whatever. I was like, well, I want my stuff back. So I'd gotten the bike running again, but I'm looking at a map and I knew where they were going. And I could see this spot out in the desert where the range of their bikes, there was no way they were going to not have to stop for gas in this one little town. I'm at the very top of California. They're at the very, very southern tip of California. But I know they got to stop for gas. And guessing they're going to go down the coast here and there. So I set off and I did my own personal cannonball. I rode the length of California nonstop as fast as I could possibly go. Got to that one gas station. And sure enough, I hadn't been there an hour. And they come rolling in and there I am sitting at the gas pump. So they're on their way to Vegas. And, I get my stuff back, but the bike is hanging by a thread. And as ticked off as I am at these guys, I'm thinking, I am out here in the middle of nowhere. And I could tell they felt kind of bad. Like, I think they were just excited to meet these girls, and they felt like I was going to kind of dampen the party. And I could tell they felt a little bad. So they said, look, we'll all ride together, get to Vegas, make sure your bike gets there without dying. Because we were going to go across Death Valley. And, again, it's Death Valley, cell phones, early days of cell phones don't work. Like, it's not a great place to get stranded. So I'm like, all right, look, we'll all stick together. So begrudgingly, we all get back on the road in our little motorcade, and we take off, and we're crossing Death Valley, and we stop at this little town out in the middle of Death Valley. It's called Stovepipe Wells. It's where the hottest temperature on Earth was recorded at some point. We stop and, just taking a water break. And if you've ever ridden a motorcycle through that kind of desert heat, I think this is like around the 4th of July, even middle summer. This is as hot as it could be. It was 122 degrees in the shade. My boots are sticking to the pavement. When I was riding, I had this leather jacket with all these vents and things on it. You'd think that, open all the vents up, get enough air flowing would help, but it's actually hotter to have the air blowing on you. It's like somebody holding a hairdryer in your face and making it hot. So I had my fleece jacket on, my winter gloves. I had tape around. I'd gone from ventilation to oven mitt. Like, it was so hot, I was trying to insulate myself from the heat. And I finally understand why those guys in the Middle East you see with the big heavy wool robes on out in the desert, and you think, oh my God, aren't you guys burning to death? You're actually more comfortable. I would have put on a down parka and been more comfortable than I was with that air blowing on me. We stopped for some water. Of course, you're just sweating it all out. We're just drinking as much water as we can. And as I'm waiting on the bike, fiddling around with the thing I'd had to fix, two of the guys in our group were talking to this other, I say a couple. This guy pulls in on a very custom motorcycle. It's bright yellow, big chopper. It's got all this crazy kind of Native American feathers and things, dream catchers painted on it. And he is a Native American fella. Very cheesy, though. He just kind of looked like a caricature almost. He had this, sleeveless denim shirt with the shoulders all conveniently frayed, and it's all acid washed, and the acid wash jeans and all this jewelry and the wraparound sunglasses. Like, he just looked like an extra off a Renegade or something. He was just very, very gaudy, cheesy guy. But on the back of his motorcycle, of his chopper, he had this tiny little, maybe Pakistani, kind of Southern Asian guy on the back of his bike. And that guy just had like a duffel bag with him. These two did not go together at all. Some of the guys in my group are there talking to him, and they seem to be engaged in some sort of, not a transaction, but some kind of deal. And sun's going down, so we get back on the bikes, and that guy's since ridden off. The guys that we're with, they say, okay, we got to make a stop on the way to Vegas. A couple of these guys are going to buy some things from this guy, and we got to meet him out in this little ghost town. It sounds pretty cool. And I know y'all have heard me say this in several stories, the Maverick story and whatnot. I'm like, you're going to a drug deal in a ghost town? Like, is this an episode of Scooby-Doo? Like, what are we doing here? Well, it's getting dark. We need to get to Vegas. Like, what are you? They're like, sorry, the girls we're meeting, like we told them, if you want to go on by yourself, but if you want to stay with the group and not get left out in Death Valley if your bike dies, then, this is what we're doing. And I'm just like, okay, fine. Now, I am the only one in the group that has a gun. And my wife with me has a gun as well. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm just going to sit at the edge of town, let them do their thing. So we go outside of town a few ways. We got some cryptic directions written on a piece of paper. Make a couple of turns. We're on some gravel road. We get way out in the middle of nowhere. And sure enough, it's like sunset, and it's a dang ghost town. Like, it's the one main street where it looked like the shootouts would be, and all these rickety old falling down buildings. And there are some signs of modern life. There's a bunch of signs that say, like, don't get off the road. There's a bunch of open pit mines. There's some no trespassing signs. There's a sign that says look out for rattlesnakes. I mean, so people obviously go out here. These days it'd be some Instagram place, but 20 years ago it was just an old ghost town. So we ride into town, and just like in a movie, the chopper is just parked. The yellow chopper is parked at the other end of the street, just sitting in the middle of the road. We don't see the guys. Now we are 6 early 20-year-old people. We're all on, $10,000 to $15,000 motorcycles. We've got cash. We've got camping gear, whatnot. I mean, if you were gonna rob a bunch of people, there's probably $100,000 worth of stuff that we all collectively have between us. So immediately I'm like, this is a really bad idea. We're at one, and they're like, no, these guys seem cool. Look, you stay back. We're just gonna ride in, and they're like, man, I wouldn't go in there. They're like, no, it's gonna be cool. I just kind of stop at one end of this main street, and they ride on up to where the chopper is, and everybody shuts off their motors. I've got, my hand on my gun in my jacket. I can feel her sitting behind me. She's got her hand on her gun in her jacket just in case something goes crazy. And I'm back a ways. I'm not in, like, they're just right, all these empty windows and stuff. The first thing I hear when the bike's shut off, of course the desert is very still and very quiet. I can hear this really tinny sounding like music, like from the little guy, like whatever from his country. It's like some sort of foreign music playing out of like a boombox, but it's just like up in a window somewhere, like it's just playing out into the town. And then the Indian guy, his license plate said like Zuni or something like that on the bike. But anyway, the Indian guy, Native American Indian guy, not ironically, we have two different. There's a Asian Indian guy with the duffel bag, American Indian guy with the chopper. The chopper guy is like up in a window, and he's like standing in a window, kind of like leg back, kind of posing. He's like, hey, fellas, says some line, and he's up in an upstairs window. I'm immediately checking all the other windows, looking for somebody with a gun. But sure enough, the smaller Pakistani guy comes out with the duffel bag. These guys I'm with buy something, I don't know what. I didn't even want to know. They buy something from this guy. And, Indian guy comes down, gets on the chopper, they shake hands, and he and the guy ride off in the other direction, and nothing happened, which I know might be kind of anticlimactic as a story, but it was a drug deal in a ghost town. And, of course, I'm mad because they took me to a drug deal in a ghost town. It's just like, my friend Ryan with the Maverick, like, how do I keep getting into these situations? Like, I don't even smoke cigarettes. How do I always seem to get in these situations? We make it to Vegas without incident and, parted ways, and they did their trip and I did mine. But that was just one of those first times that, that bike just seemed to have some weird karma around it.
Finding your next dream car can be like searching for a needle in a haystack, but the best tool to use is AutoTempest.com. AutoTempest is the smartest and most powerful tool to search for your next car or your dream car because they allow you to search all the major listing sites at once. Their motto is all the cars, one search, and they've been supporting VINwiki for the last 3 years. Quite honestly, it's the first place I go to look when I'm searching for my next car, and I think that you'll absolutely love it. So check them out today at the link in the description below and thank them for their continued support of VINwiki.